It's podcast day. It's podcast day. Welcome in, friends. Welcome to the heyBrownBerry YouTube channel. My name is Mars, and I don't know why I hesitated there. Maybe I'm unsure of who I am in this moment. I am happy to be back here recording this video so that I can invite you back into this space, primarily my making space, but also I think my headspace. I'm recording on a day and at a time where I just have a lot of things I'm processing mentally. Oh, we're just jumping right in, aren't we? I'm really happy that you choose to click on the thumbnail that brings you here into this conversation with me. So thank you for that. And I appreciate especially those of you who take the time to comment on my YouTube videos. Many times when I'm thinking about whether or not I should record a podcast episode, I think about the kinds of comments you've left and the conversations that come about because of it. And quite honestly, that's what gets me back in this chair. It's a time of year here in South Florida where I live that the season change is starting to become a little more obvious. We don't tend to get the drastic switch from hot summer days into cool fall days here, but I can definitely tell by how I feel that a new season is coming. And that's also showing up in just changes that are happening in my life. I welcome it. I welcome this next period of time. And some of the things that I wanted to share with you have been really comforting to me. For the last few years, I have made a point to do what I call December downtime. So at the end of the year, I make a really, I would say a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a very explicit effort. Gosh, don't you hate it when there's a word that you want and it completely, it doesn't even completely escape you. It escapes you just enough. Deliberately. Thank you. I very deliberately start to slow down, and slowing down often means just not scheduling as many things in the month of December and purposely making cozy moments in my day. And I tend to lean into things that allow for that. So what I've noticed this year is I'm kind of ready for that already, like right now. And it's only October. And I think it's because each year that I've done that, I didn't regret it. I didn't feel like I was missing out on a lot of the hubbub and stress of the latter part of most years. And now, of course, because it was good, I want to extend it out a few months. So this coming season is feeling like a time that I can just generally listen to myself a bit more. And what happens when I don't really listen to my own thoughts and musings on things is that I tend to just jump into stuff, and I just grab onto something and I get into it and I do it. And then I find somewhere in the process that I feel drained or stressed by it. That's not everything. Some of the things I get involved in fill me up completely. But many of you can relate to how, as the year starts to draw to a close, the pace of things feels like it really picks up. activities and holidays and other things just kind of ramp that tempo right up. And so I do feel like it has to be a deliberate process to bring some of that back down. And my making is a big part of that. What I don't have yet, I'm just thinking of this, what I don't have yet is kind of a sink into it project. In years past, I've had things like a big crochet blanket to tuck into each day, or even a sweater project. Working on a sweater for my plump and voluptuous size can take some time to make, and tucking into a sweater project is a great way to encourage myself to just slow down at some point each day. In life stuff, I have started a new job. So as of just a few days ago, I'm in a new role at my same company. And the pace of that job is also an uptick. I chose to move into that space professionally because it's a really good job. It's a good opportunity. It's going to be a good use of my skills, but it's a really obvious tempo shift. And so I think some of my desire to start slowing down a bit earlier is in response to that. Funny how when you're doing something that's a bit creative or would even be considered leisurely, it can often feel like that's when you have the most time to process things, even things that have to do with work or whatever else is a big part of your life. Often the thoughts about that other stuff, I think they have more space to come to you when you're making, creating, or relaxing in some way. And so I have been working on a puzzle that is kindly on loan from my friend Katie. And Katie has really turned me on to puzzling as a way to unwind. And when I say unwind, I don't just mean the drop your shoulders kind, but to literally take time to untangle things and let my thoughts kind of stretch out and straighten out a bit. And puzzling in this particular season has been this huge metaphor for my move into this new role at my job. And it wasn't something that I realized before. The way in which we approach things that are new to us, I feel like working on a puzzle is a perfect parallel. And the job that I'm taking on is going to be more technical. It's going to involve interacting with a lot more people. And one of the requirements for my role is to really bring together pieces. You see where I'm going there? And the challenge I face, especially starting out, is not all of the things that I need are immediately obvious. I don't know everybody that I need to know yet. And some of how things will fit together is just going to be about me developing an approach that makes those things fit together. And I almost don't want to be heavy-handed with this metaphor, but I kid you not, I was sitting at the puzzle table doing what I normally do, which is to kind of dump out all the pieces. And one of the first things I try to do is turn them all over so that the pretty side is showing, the side with the picture is showing, because that gives me this overall view of what I'm working with. And then I tend to work puzzles in a couple of ways. If it's a standard puzzle, easiest thing to do is to start on the edges, right? The sides that have a very obvious straight side are great for giving you the frame. And once you get all of those together, then you can start filling in. Well, the one that I'm working on, which you'll see in some of the video, does not have straight sides, does not have obvious corners, and this is what I love about this style of puzzle, which Katie actually introduced to me. I had not seen this before. It's a very textured puzzle. It has wooden pieces that are not like your vintage puzzle style. And so once I've turned everything over, where I tend to work with this kind of puzzle is from color groupings. And it's really just like those old school matching games we used to play. I can look at the pieces and say, well, based on the colors in here, these probably belong within a group together. And I start those color groupings as a way to narrow down what I'm looking at and to get an understanding of parts of the big picture. You can probably see how this relates to taking on a new job or a new anything. Some part of us needs to be able to organize what's required. And so that's what I've been doing. And then the next step is, once I've got my color groupings together, I keep looking back at the reference photo. So what is this supposed to look like in the end? Which from a job perspective would be, what is my role and how will I know when I've been successful in this role? And to put together pieces requires that you flip some things over and take a look at what's on the other side. And it requires that you bring together the things that feel like they belong together. And then you got to start creating the picture. And so looking at the reference and continuously checking back in on how will I measure the success of this task is how I do the puzzle. And quite honestly, it's how I'm going to have to do this job. Tell me if you can relate to any of that. I am actually surprised at how quickly I've gravitated towards puzzling as a way to quiet myself and process things. And the gift of this metaphor honestly had me going into this new job thinking, this is where you are. You are in a pool of huge pieces and you don't know how they all go together. And your job is to make a picture that makes sense. And if you follow the steps that you're following in putting together this picture, then it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So I love to hear from you. If any of that resonates with you, let me know. I have been making quite a bit, and I've been making kind of across disciplines. It's Socktober. It's Socktober. Did you know that? For those uninitiated, Socktober is sock knitting for the month of October, Socktober. And I, for the second year in a row, I'm sort of officially celebrating this month with my dearest Denise, who is at Earthtones Girl on Instagram, and she has the Earthtones Girl YouTube podcast out here for you to enjoy as well. And we have kind of a joint collaborative effort that we have branded Maker Minutes. And on Instagram, under the Maker Minutes hashtag, we've hosted a couple of alongs and community-focused activities. And Socktober is here, and we are celebrating it together. So follow us on Instagram. I'll make sure that Denise is linked below so that you can be part of it. If you like using that channel for interacting, come on over to Instagram for the month of October. We will be doing Instagram lives to celebrate sock knitting. Now this sock, I actually knit this as part of the Falling Leaves sock cal, and I've mentioned it in a couple episodes, so you will have seen it kind of progressing. I'm using this West Yorkshire Spinners yarn. And here is the beginning of sock 2. I wanted to show this to you again because on sock 1, I haven't woven in my last end yet. It doesn't matter. I actually had knit these cuff down. It's not my usual. I usually knit toe up. But I knit these cuff down, and boy, you can tell this is not my usual because the cuff was so tight initially. I did what I thought was a fairly loose cast on, but it wasn't loose enough. I could definitely get the sock on to my foot and up my leg, but the cast on was restrictive. Couldn't let that go by. After I finished knitting the sock, I went back and actually unpicked the cuff, which if you have ever unpicked a cast on edge, you know it is a beast of a job. It's not like unraveling something in the opposite direction from how you've knit it. So I cast this off at the toe, and if I were to open up this toe and just start unraveling it, it's as easy as pulling on a thread. But when you're trying to undo from the cast on edge, what you're essentially doing is unweaving. Did you know knitting is basically pulling loops through other loops, right? So you're kind of unweaving those loops. So it wasn't as easy as unzipping it. But I did it because I just really, really prize making things now for the wearing as much as for the knitting. I'm just kind of, I'm really caught up in that idea. So of course, in my journey of making, I've done things just for the process part of it, just for the work that goes into it, and I get joy out of that. But now when I'm making wearables especially, it has to be about the wearing, and I knew that having a tighter cuff on these socks would not make them enjoyable to wear. So the extra work of unpicking the cast on edge, going back several rows, and then picking up the stitches to re-knit them, to get the stretch I needed, was worth it. What would you have done? Yeah, it was worth it. So I've cast on sock 2, lesson learned, and sock 2, the cuff was knit on larger needles, and I went even stretchier with my cast on this time. I like to use what's called the German twisted cast on. The German twisted cast on is like a long tail cast on, but with some extra yarn within each stitch that you're creating. Yeah, so sock 1 informed the second one. Other things that I want you to know about. I have some articles published in Ply Magazine. What? I had the great privilege earlier this year of really stretching myself. Ply, whoop. Ply is a magazine really aimed at the fiber arts. The tagline says the magazine for hand spinners, and it really is all things fiber and spinning. And this is the consistency issue, which is the autumn 2021 issue. And I am so proud of, I wanted to say I'm so proud of the articles that are in here, but can I be honest? I'm really proud of the work that went into creating the pieces in this magazine. I was able to use some fiber from my friend Anne's Shetland sheep, and Anne is also featured in the magazine. And we had weekly calls talking each other through writing our articles, planning my project, and just supporting each other through something that was very new for both of us, which is this kind of long form writing about our craft. I'm really proud of both of us. It was a stretch in the sense that I had not really worked through writing something about fibercraft that would require that I give very specific detail so that a reader could follow along with what I had done. And I also had not designed a pattern based on the way that a yarn that I spun would be shown to its best. So just to kind of back up a little bit, I spun the fiber from Anne's sheep, and then I naturally dyed it using items from my dye pantry, and then I used that hand spun yarn to create a pair of mitts that I designed and wrote a pattern for. So I actually have 3 articles in here covering those topics. So there's the fiber. Oh my gosh, that fiber. I talked through the process of dyeing. With some onion skin and some iron. So I talked through the process of spinning the fiber, then the process of dyeing the fiber, and then I wrote the pattern for these mitts. They're called the Land to Hand mitts. And working through it with Anne was the first time I had also really had to, I really dove into the properties of a fiber and what it becomes when you spin it, and the variations in colors that you can get when you're really focused on how to naturally dye something. And so all of that was a stretch. I'm extremely proud of this. Anne's article is a really soulful, place-based article about how she became a shepherdess and how she came to live on the land where she lives and raises these sheep. And I want you to share in that. So we're having a giveaway. I have another copy of the magazine right here, and I'm going to send it to one of you. And all you have to do is put the word spinning in all caps in your comment below. You are very welcome to comment other things. But if I see the word spinning in all caps in your comment below the video, I'll know that you want to be entered to win this magazine. It's an excellent issue. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in it. I would love, love, love to share it with one of you. So between this video and the next one, I will do a drawing for a winner. I'll let that run for a couple of weeks or so you have some time to comment below. Anything you like, but include the word spinning in all caps if you want to be included. And then one more book-related thing I'm super proud of is I have a pattern published in the Confident Knitting book. Here's the cover for that. The Confident Knitting book is the third in a series of books by Jen Arnold Culliford, and she and her husband publish these books and run an amazing, amazing fiber business. Publishing these books on their own is a feat I can't even imagine. And this is the third in a series of books that are meant to cover techniques. And it's a year of techniques, so you can explore by way of a pattern each month different techniques. And I really feel like this is for all levels. And I'm very proud to have been part of this as well. I tell you, the things that this community has offered me surprise even me sometimes. I met Jen in person at Rhinebeck back when we used to go to the outside. And she and I got to talking. We have mutual friends. She asked would I like to be part of this. And I love the concept of empowering makers. You guys know that. And that's what this series of books does. It approaches techniques in a way that is encouraging, and each skill kind of builds on the one before. So you can work through the series in a year-long fashion, or you can jump into the technique that you would most like to be better at. And so I wrote a pattern for what are called the terrain mitts. I'll show you them. It's a pair of fingerless mitts done with mosaic knitting for color work. And the photography in this book is unbelievable. And the level of detail for the technique tutorials, like, so impressive. There are some incredible designers in here. My friend Jimmy from Jimmy Knits is represented in here. Jeanette Budge is in here, another friend of mine. I just feel like, I feel lucky. So, I don't know why that feels slightly corny, but I do. I feel lucky to have been part of something so cool. And I want to give you one of these too. I am going to give away a copy of this Confident Knitting book to those of you who comment knitting in all caps in your comment. And the reason I'm asking you to put it in all caps is just so that I know you are explicitly saying, I want to be entered to win a copy of this book. You will not be disappointed. Trust me. There are video tutorials that support each pattern, along with the detailed technique, photos, and descriptions in the book. So lots of good stuff in there. So comment all caps knitting if you would like to be entered to win that book. Same thing, I'll leave that open and available for you to comment for a couple of weeks. Sometimes I go to our local library and I go there for the purpose of taking out books strictly meant to give my brain a break and also to inspire me a bit. I went to get the Japanese. This is 1,000 Japanese knitting and crochet stitches. It is, what do we call these? It's a reference book, stitch pattern reference book that has 1,000 stitches in it between the knit and crochet craft. This is exactly what I mean when I say I go to the library to get books to unwind and inspire. I've flipped through this book at least 4 times now, and you can see kind of the idea. Stitch patterns with charts. The beginning of the book explains the symbols that are included in the charts, but there are no written instructions. So after you understand what the symbols are, you would just follow the chart to make that pattern. As a sock designer, this is right up my alley. This is something that, I mean, whole pairs of socks live in here. And I also would love to branch out in terms of color work and texture. So I go to the library, I get books like this, I flip through them over and over and over again. I've actually purchased stitch dictionaries like this for that purpose. The more times I look through it, the more my brain starts to piece together, you know, how would that look on the front of a sock? What about on a hat? If I wanted to do color work, at what level would I use, you know, this or that motif? It's just a lot of inspiration in here. So yay for local libraries and their crafty book section. I also did go to the library to get a physical book to read. So this month in particular, I've been doing more reading by way of audiobooks, and I went to get this physical book. My husband Drew listened to this book called American Dirt, and the author is Janine Cummins. Drew read this book, or listened to this book, and highly recommended it. He spoke about it quite a few times after listening to it. And he usually steers me right with things like that. So when we were in the library, I thought, I'll get a physical book to read. I'm not great with physical books anymore. I can read a chapter or two, but then I get sleepy, my eyes get tired. And it's mostly because for many years now, I have listened to audiobooks almost exclusively. Every now and then I'll pick up a physical book like this and try to read it. And I'm going to be honest with you again. I'm listening to this on audiobook right now in parallel. No shame. I keep it on my nightstand, and sometimes at night I will read it, flipping the pages. Still very nostalgic to my days as a bookworm when I was young. But I'm listening to it most of the time during the day or in the evenings when I'm winding down. Very good. I have seen some articles about this one. I shouldn't say some articles. There was a particular writer who was addressing the fact that this author maybe has stepped out of their own lane in writing this story. That's the most I'll say about that, because it's not for me to impose someone else's opinion on you. I am enjoying the book because the characters in it, primarily a mother and her son, feel very real to me in the way that they're dealing with something extremely difficult. And I've actually been very emotional at different points reading this book. I don't know if that's a parental thing. I don't know if it's about being a minority, about being an immigrant to another country. Some part of me is connecting to the story quite deeply, and that's why I'm recommending it. American Dirt, Janine Cummins. If you've read it, let me know. If you have thoughts on it, let me know. And I think the last thing I will do is just wrap up with sharing a little bit of my natural dye playtime with you. Mostly because I want to share that I tried a new fiber for dyeing and loved it.
So I just wanted to show the difference in the marigold dyed silk and mohair. This color that's about accurate. It's such a rich orangey yellow, and I'm showing it next to the undyed. This mohair silk has been mordanted with some alum, and so it's just waiting its turn for a dye pot, but I wanted to show the difference in the undyed and dyed. Big fan, big fan. So floofy.
Actually, I've tried two new things on which to apply color, especially for natural dyeing. One of them is some linen yarn, which I would actually consider like linen thread. I have played with avocado dyeing in the past, and so this first little bit I'm going to show you is avocado dyed linen. From a little shop in Norway. And this was my first sampling of dyeing with it. And the purple is from using some iron with the avocado, because avocado pits, the little stone part, the little seed, give ranges of pink and peachy colors. This recent dye pot playtime was playing around with some marigold dye, which gives yellows. So marigolds from my garden have been prolific and I've been using them up. And when you add iron, that tends to shift the yellows into the green shades. So this is a nice pale green because this was from what's called an exhaust bath. So once you've absorbed a lot of the color for other materials, the little bit of color that's left can sometimes be useful. And I love that shade of green. But the star of the show this time around, this fire orange was created by a natto seed, which is this cool, crazy looking plant. It looks like a little Venus flytrap that's been dried, and inside there are these orangey red seeds, and they give a gorgeous color. And I actually added to them some leaves. Gumbo limbo trees are very common here in South Florida. And I added some dried gumbo limbo leaves to get this color. It's intense. I tried a new fiber, as I said, and I loved that color so much that I put it on this new fiber. I tried dyeing on silk mohair. Basically, clouds. Basically clouds. I had never dyed on the mohair silk blend before. I wasn't sure how this kind of high halo fiber would react in, a multiple step process of heat and wetting and dunking and so on, but man, oh man, is it amazing. I'll share some video with you of the process and some close-ups. Yeah, it was such a great experiment. Because I hadn't done it before, I had some idea of what I wanted to do in terms of protecting the fiber from felting together and so on. And I'll show you some strands here. I mean, it is knittable. It's got a halo anyway, right? It would have, whether I dyed it or not, it has a halo. That's kind of the point. The individual strands have mohair on a silk thread. So I managed to not mess it up in the process. I'm really happy about that. When I dye, I love to just start dunking things in. You would think that I would keep a stash of dye-ready materials around the house. I'm really bad about that. I get a bee in my bonnet to start dyeing, and then I'm looking around scrambling for what can I throw in the dye pot. Everything gets thrown in. Case in point, Your Honor. Any John Arbin cotton canvas bags that come in a cream color are fair game for the dye pot. Those often get thrown in there. I have several of these in different colors that went into the dye pot because I got desperate or ran out of yarn. And with the marigolds, I did some other skeins. Now I got these skeins on D-Stash. I got these skeins from someone who follows me on Instagram and had commented here on YouTube that she had some extra bundles of undyed yarn, and the mohair silk was part of that. So we had marigold and marigold with iron on the silk mohair blend as well. If I've said it before, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Natural dye colors go beautifully together. Because you all are so encouraging and I'm just in a super giveaway mood, I'm also going to give away some naturally dyed yarn. It will come in this stunning bag that was made by my friend Kim Thompson, who's the Crafty Nomad. And I've showed it here on the podcast before, and you all did give me some lovely ideas for how I could use these colors together. Let me show them to you. Cute, right? In order to win these, no surprise, comment natural dyeing in all caps below. These are Knit Picks yarns that I dyed. So it was marigold and onion skin, and it's the Wool of the Andes blend. If you're familiar with Knit Picks yarns, it's actually sport weight. And so it's a really great hat or mitt or cowl yarn. It's 100% Peruvian Highland wool. And it is, let's see, 137 yards in each of these 50-gram skeins. So got some to play with here. Some color work or striping. And yeah, I'll ship them to you in this beautiful bag. And guess what? If you want to be entered in all 3 of these giveaways, comment natural dyeing, comment spinning, and comment knitting. Any combination of those 3 words in your comment. When I draw for a winner, I'll look to see what you have put in your comment so I know what to send you. That's it for this one, friends. Thank you so much for giving me this space. You are always welcome back here. Please, please share with me what you've been up to. How is this new season looking for you? Wherever you are in the world, as the time is changing, what does it look like in your part of the planet? I love having you here, and I look forward to being back with you again soon. Bye for now.